Welcome to our first video lecture for observation and assessment. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about the basics of why we observe. Why do we kind of have a whole class on observation and assessment and documentation? I think one of the bigger reasons why we observe and why we have a class built about this is to support kind of how children's learning and development. And a lot of the ways that we support learning and development is by the curriculum development process. So we design, we develop, we implement, we monitor, we evaluate, and we review children's learning, and we build that into our curriculum. So if we're working with infants and toddlers, part of our curriculum would be observing children, seeing where all of the 5, 6, or 7 children in our class are at, and how we can develop activities and materials to better support their learning so we can get them to the next level and we can support them in all their areas of development, social, emotional, physical, self-help, things like that. So a big part of it is just this kind of process, and it's much easier to design and develop and implement curriculum when you know where your children are at developmentally. If you're not sure what stage they're at, what understanding they have, what they can do physically, making curriculum and getting materials and writing lesson plans is really, really difficult. So the more information we have about the children in our classroom, the better designing, developmenting, and implementing curriculum is. Also, monitoring, evaluating, and reviewing is kind of the second part, and that's built into our class as well because we'll be learning about making portfolios, making assessments, documenting children's learning so we can go back and we can see how they've progressed. And also through our observations and our assessments, we know we can evaluate and review what children have learned and how good kind of our curriculum was. By an observation, can we see, oh, the children didn't understand this assignment, this lesson plan didn't make sense to them. By observation and observing children, we can see, because not all of our lesson plans work, right? Sometimes they're big old flops. I was a teacher for years, and I had some great curriculum, and I had some great lesson plans, but I would be lying if I said that sometimes they just didn't work. Sometimes they weren't developmentally appropriate, sometimes they were too ambitious, sometimes they were too simple. Whatever it was, I had to observe the children and be like, man, that lesson plan did not work. Scrap that. We got to try, we got to review. I got to say that didn't work. And I've either got to try to make it better or I've got to scrap it all together. Another reason that we might observe is that whole kind of parent-teacher engagement issue. So it's easier to communicate with parents when you know their child really well and you've observed them. And let's say, maybe you're having some struggles, maybe we're having some challenges in the classroom. Being able to observe objectively those challenges and struggles and communicate them in a respectful way to parents is a really, really good way to do it. It's not just my kind of word of, oh, we're really struggling with transitions, sitting still at circle time is just really, he can't keep his hands to himself. He's constantly touching his friends and giving them what willies and all this type of stuff. If we have videos, pictures, written down observations that show a pattern maybe of being inattentive or struggling to keep your hands to yourself, that type of thing, we might have some better communication with the parents as we kind of show them some of the issues that they might kind of want to address as well. It helps with guidance as well. So let's say just normal child issues and they need some help. Being able to know what their trigger is. Maybe it's always at a specific time, maybe it's a specific place, maybe it's with a specific teacher or other child. Being able to know as much about a child and kind of their triggers, their issues, their behaviors will help us be better guides to them and help them shape their behavior so it's more proactive as well. We might need to refer, sometimes our children will come with us with maybe a differing ability or a special ability and they need some help with speech or the physical therapy, occupational therapy. A good base of observation will help the parents get that referral and will also help us support the parents through that referral process as well. As somebody whose child is still in speech therapy, she has the exact same lisp that my younger sister has. I love being able to refer It can be a process with parents. We have to jump into it in a supportive way. But I was noticing at like 2.5 and 3 that her speech was not sounded just like my baby sister once again. And with the help of the child development staff at her preschool, we were able to get some observations together and send it to the school district. And she's gone ahead and she got all of her assessments, and now she has speech therapy, and she still goes twice a week, even now that she's in 4th grade, although it's getting better and better every single week. But yeah, it's pretty adorable. That's exactly what my younger sister had like 30 years ago. But that referral process was much easier by having the support of her preschool staff, who was also seeing the same kind of speech delays that I was. And then self-reflection and accountability. Like, am I actually doing what I want to do? Am I meeting the needs of the children in my classroom? Observations can really, really kind of help with that as well. So why should we write it down? Can I keep it in my brain? No, you can't, especially the more people you have in your classroom. And then if you think of all the domains and development that you might have for a child, a tremendous amount of information. And we also want the support of pictures that they've drawn, things that they've said. When I started the observation process, I mean, it was a while ago. The internet existed, but we didn't have iPads, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have anything. We literally had pens, and I had like little notebooks like this that I would write, and then the paper easily tore out, and then it would go in their portfolios. Now, so much of it is online. It's so nice. It's so easy. It's so organized. Whereas back in the day, it was much harder. But remembering, do we always remember everything perfectly? Not always. A lot of times our memory can be spotty and we can misremember, or we can be too negative, or we can be too positive. Actually writing down exactly what happened as if we were a newscaster is the best way to get information about the child, and to also keep it so that we can objectively look at their progress through their development. We don't often compare children, but we compare them against milestones. So if we have a child like my daughter and her speech is not what it should be for our speech milestones for a 3-year-old, that would be an indicator to me and her preschool staff of she's going to need some extra support. So we don't usually compare them to each other, but we compare them to the milestones that we know and say, okay, we're a little bit low on our speech. She should have, more than 70 words, and she has, 20 words. So we're going to get her in some speech therapy. It's also a great way to communicate with parents. I love being able to go to my daughter's preschool. She's in kindergarten. My youngest is in kindergarten now. But I loved being able to go into her preschool and see all of the great things, see the pictures up on the wall, and then also kind of the portfolios that they had made for each child, where it was pictures and observations and things like that that really showed how much she had grown, because she was at the school for 3 years, from toddler until she went to kindergarten, to see how much she had grown in all of her developmental areas. How she could scribble at the very beginning, but she could do like pretty, she can make heads and stick figures at the very end. So communicating with me about how my child is developing, or if there are issues as well, is another reason we have to write it down. We want to preserve those details. So we think our memory is great, but it's often not as great as we might think. We might be more negative when we're thinking back on it, or more positive. And then also details. Are we actually going to remember exactly what the child said? Maybe not, but if we write it down in the moment, even, I still always, as in the classroom, have sticky notes. So I still have little tiny sticky notes, and I'll write things down. Like I'll write exactly like the words exactly that a child will said, and then later on I can put it on their online assessment or something like that. But it's a great way to just remember exactly what they said, exactly what they did, something like that, because those details do add up to a bigger picture of a child. And then we want to document and assess our classroom as a whole, our curriculum as a whole. How well is it going? And then how is the child doing as well? Different observation methods. We're going to learn all about this, but we use different types of recording methods. We can videotape them. We can write observations about them. We can do checklists about them. We can take their work that they're doing themselves, like a monthly work sample, or just a one-off thing that they've created. We can also look at the environment specifically as a whole, and how are the observation and materials being observed, and how can those better work to help children as well. We're going to go into all of this more in detail in class. when we observe, so coronavirus, you guys are going to be doing this online. It would be better if I could get you out in the person into a real life environment, but it's very hard right now. So we have a kind of natural setting where children are engaged in play. That's what we're looking for. So if you were ever to observe in real life, it would be the classroom or the outdoor environment where children are, and they should be engaged in play. We can observe at transition times like meal times, lineup time, washing hand times, and those can be great observations about behavior. But if we're really looking for development, it's when they're engaged in play. So we're sitting down, we're making ourselves inconspicuous. We are not the star show. We are not the main character when we are observing. We are in the background and we are just writing down furiously everything that we see. So typically, what are the roles of the observer? For you guys in this class, you're a non-participant observer. You're the student who is going into the classroom. Unfortunately, not really. But if you really were, you are the student or the visiting teacher or the family member or another professional who is not a participant. You are just an observer. You are sitting back. You are not the main character. You are inconspicuous, watching what is going on. A lot of times you might be a participant though. If you're the teacher, a student teacher, or a home visitor, that's somebody who regularly comes into the classroom to help with one child, typically when they have special needs or are at risk, you are a participant observer. So you are the teacher and you are the observer at the same time. So you're wearing two different hats. So it can be hard sometimes to observe. You get more observations because you're just in the classroom all the time. And so you are constantly having your little sticky notes and you're taking pictures and you have your iPads and all of those types of things to support the observation, but you're also teaching and helping with mediation and opening up juice boxes and wiping runny noses, all the things that teachers and student teachers and home visitors do. For the purposes of the class, you're taking off your teacher hat and you're putting on your student hat. And you are really looking at it for all of the ways that you can observe and why observation is important. So kind of take off that teacher hat and put on that non-participant observer hat. At the very end, the last kind of section of class, so for 2 weeks, we'll be learning about portfolio assessments or documentation. So this is when we kind of take everything that a child has and we try to use it physically, what the child has made, to kind of physically support what we know and what we're observing. So snippets of their conversations, self-portraits, pictures of them, videos of them, writings of them as well. Pre-K and like more high scope programs will do kind of checklists or things like that. So what kind of shapes can they recognize? What kind of numbers do they know? How high can they count? Can they go to the bathroom by themselves? Can they do a 10-piece puzzle? That type of stuff. So I worked in a like a high scope program, which was wasn't academic, but we definitely did a lot of learning through play, and that was our support. But at the end, before they went on to kindergarten, we would sit down and we would do a little kind of checklist to see what children could know before they went into kindergarten. So we wanted to know if they could use the restroom by themselves, that if they could line up in line, that they could separate from their parents easily, that they could use scissors, that they could write their own name, just their first name, that they could count to 20, that they could sing the alphabet, that type of stuff. So we had a checklist kind of similar to what you might see on the 7th on the left-hand page. In addition, we also had all of these portfolios, which had their pictures and their video clips and their writings and things like that that we had just collected that supported where they were developed. So we used both. Some programs won't kind of do kind of a kindergarten checklist. Some programs will, depending on kind of the funding that they might get from the state or the feds as well. Most programs will always kind of keep a lot of their materials, things that they've created to kind of support just the straight observations you're also doing. All right, so what I'd like you to do, I'm not going to check up on this. This isn't an assignment, but just to keep fresh in your mind, what are 2 reasons why we should observe children? So I just want you to kind of think about it this week, your assignments and things like that, and your readings. why should we observe children? At least two kind of reasons why you think we should observe children. This is just to support your own learning as we kind of go through class. So just for your own benefit, two reasons that you think you should observe children. All right, that's it for this short video lecture. I will have more as the class goes on where I kind of support you in learning more about types of observations, but this is just a teaser of the things we'll be learning in this class.